and welcome to the podcast of the Lotus Eaters for the 25th of July 2024. I am Josh and I am joined by Stelios, who is back
Hello.
from his travels. Where have you been, Stelios?
I was in Greece. I got married and then I was on my honeymoon. And while I was away, a lot of things happened.
Mm-hmm.
I saw assassination attempts. The whole world broke loose. So I had a lovely time, but I have to come back and put order in chaos.
A lot happened in Greece then, political assassinations. Is that just while you were there?
No, it wasn't in Greece.
I'm being silly. But no, everyone congratulate Stereos.
Thank you very much.
Turned into an Asian man now. Everyone congratulate Stereos. I've already said it already when he came back, but yes. It's good to have you back.
Thank you very much.
Today we've got a very good podcast. So we're talking about Germany and how it's not looking good for their future. That's me talking about that. And Stelios is talking about how knives have become sentient and they also have mental health issues. And I'll be talking about the rise in political violence, where we're going to be talking a bit more sort of political theory than normal. It's not going to be so newsy. We're just going to be talking about the nature of political violence and trying to understand it more, because it's being talked about a lot more. And I think it's an important thing to understand, because I think it's a concern of pretty much everyone in the Western world now. So we do have some announcements. People are getting Islander in places like Australia and Canada now. So bear in mind, worldwide shipping takes a while. All of the magazines are printed in the UK. And so we are shipping them out from the UK. So it's not like we're printing them domestically and shipping them out to your address. They're all coming from here, which also means they're all consistent. They're all of a quality that we approve of. And final announcement for today, at least, is that we're doing the Rumble Rantsing again. But yes, we're also going to try and make as much time as we can for the written website comments too. So things are not looking too good for Germany. And I think this headline really says it all. Welfare costs exploding in Germany. 47.3% of recipients are foreigners, which is massive, right? You know, we've been saying this for a long time. It's good to have some hard data. And the fact that it's half of all welfare recipients aren't even Germans.
It is, and it isn't just in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true all over the Western world.
The Western world.
All of the desirable places to live now have this.
Yeah.
And to give you some of the numbers quickly, I'm just going to fire these off, reading from the article. Recipients received a record of 42.6 billion euros in citizens' money in 2023 compared to 36.6 billion in 2022. So that's a significant increase, isn't it? Now, a record 5.49 million citizens are on welfare. Approximately 47.3% were non-German foreigners, which is 4 points more than 2022. So if you can imagine this trend continuing, it going up 4 points each time, well, eventually the native Germans are going to be paying for all of these foreigners on welfare, and it's going to be a significant portion of the welfare recipients.
And not only just paying for them, but also being sabotaged by their government in their economic activity. Because I'm sure you're going to talk a lot about it. I think I anticipate. But their policies aren't particularly friendly towards their agricultural sector, and not just that.
Oh, many sectors, yes.
Yeah, so I don't want to anticipate much, so
You've done your reading, Stelios. In addition, there was another record 6.3 billion worth of administration costs for the Citizens Benefit Programme, which is 300 million more than 2022. If this administrative money is added, then the total welfare cost is equivalent to 48.9 billion euros. This figure is 14.8% higher than 2023 and 18.4% higher compared to 2020 and 23% higher compared to 2015.
Well, you see, I think that this is a clear indication of the tendencies of countries within the EU, because you constantly hear the argument from EU officials and the bureaucrats of the organization that the Western population cannot replenish its numbers. So they have to be, let's say, there has to be an influx of foreign population in order for the demographic to be accounted for. But it does seem that it's not the foreigners who are helping Germans. It's the Germans
the opposite.
Who are helping foreigners, and not just in Germany, in every other country.
Who'd have thought the Germans are helping themselves? History has never showed that to be the case. I mean, Protestant work ethic and all that, But yes, that whole idea of migration being a net benefit to societies, we know that's nonsense. The facts are now suggesting it's nonsense. Germany is the perfect case. And we're going to see what these migrants who are, net beneficiaries of Germans working hard, how they repay the native Germans. Well, things like this. So journalist for pro-migrant Spiegel magazine complains on X after being punched in the face by 13-year-old Syrian. That's how they get repaid. And I'm going to read, he did a tweet, obviously in German, but it has been translated into a real language. I'm sorry, I'm only joking. Today, I had my own experience with a so-called refugee, which I find interesting. So-called, all of a sudden, get punched in the face, you change your mind. In Husum, a Syrian punched me in the face. I had defended two elderly women who asked him to get off the back of a public bench on which they were sitting and not to continue to spit at their feet, which I think is a perfectly reasonable request. And actually, he might be a left-winger who, is in favour of these people coming into the country. However, he did intervene to protect women. So I am going to give a little bit of credit to the man, even though his own, support for these policies has created the situation in the first place.
It's 2024. I mean, you can give him some benefit of the doubt. And yeah, okay, we should acknowledge, we should give credit where it's due.
Mm-hmm.
But he had an X account for years, presumably.
Mm-hmm. And it's taken until now.
He seems to be an adult, more than 18 years old. So yes. He must have read a book or something, or read a newspaper or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he should have done his homework.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. But yes, some people, funnily enough, deny the existence of these sorts of things going on. He carries on to say, the interesting thing, the police had told me that it was a 13-year-old Syrian who was well known in the city who had been caught over 50 times for theft and violent crimes since the beginning of 2024 alone. Sanctions available, none.
Well, Josh,
why don't you do something?
It's the problem of induction. Just because he has done it 50 times doesn't mean that he's going to do it 51.
Oh, I know. But yes, this is a more silly example, but there are some really horrific ones as well, which I'm going to sort of torture you with. This one here, Moroccan migrant pushes 55-year-old passenger to his death at famed train station, had just been released by police for assault and pickpocketing. So this was an 18-year-old Moroccan man who had only been released that evening, and then he went on at 1:30 in the morning, I think it was, to just randomly push a 55-year-old passenger into an incoming train. This, obviously, is vile. This man shouldn't be alive anymore, this 18-year-old Moroccan who did the crime, and that German man should be alive. And it was a policy decision that this happened. They chose to allow this person to be in the country. They chose to release him after he committed a crime spree. They chose not to deport him. They made lots of choices. There are lots of points in the lead up to this where it could have been prevented.
If they took him back to Morocco, most probably Moroccans wouldn't treat him well.
Good.
So isn't that a thing that consider?
Anything
as we are constantly being told.
Anything other than death is a blessing for that man. I'm sorry, they don't deserve anything. And again, things like this. 20 foreigners beat German 14-year-old boy in viral video in Gira, I think it is. And the attackers were Afghan and Syrian of origin. So again, Middle Easterners up to no good, beating up the natives. And it's infuriating. This is entirely preventable. And of course, if you cast your minds back to this, the Islamist terror attack, I suppose, attacking an anti-Islam activist, Michael Sturzenberger. Yeah, there he is. That's a screenshot of the video. He also killed a police officer. This is the repayment to the Germans for giving them all of this money is active hostility.
I did the segment about this, and the reaction was predictably insane.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you had all the leftists coming out and saying, well, you shouldn't allow the far right to exist and stuff.
Well,
which has
be talking about that.
We're looking at something different here,
mm-hmm.
and they're not addressing it.
Mm-hmm. So all of this money is going towards these foreign criminals. I think it's fair to say, right? And they're repaying them with violence and disdain, spitting at the feet, stabbing them, pushing them in front of trains. This is the real preventable things that are happening that could have been avoided. And it's leading to situations like this. Is Germany the sick man of Europe once again? We're talking about the state of their economy now, because they've been saddled with all of these dependents, basically, and their economy is struggling. And it's worth mentioning here, this article, Germany's energy crisis, Europe's leading economy is falling behind. And of course, they had problems with importing lots of energy because they transitioned to green technology when the technology wasn't there. It wasn't able to sustain them. And so they made a massive blunder in the energy sector, which pushed the cost of production. And they've got lots of like chemical and industry in Germany that's very much important to their economy. They're sort of renowned for it internationally. And so this has pushed up the production cost and made them far less competitive, made it more expensive to produce, and has had, to say the least, a catastrophic effect on their economy. Add on top of that the lockdowns, the distribution damage, and all of the other factors that have affected lots of other countries as well. And you find a very worrying situation for the German economy.
And this is also a choice.
Mm-hmm.
This is also a choice because the German government chose to close down some of the nuclear reactors they have, which means that they're becoming more dependent on foreign energy.
It's ridiculous.
It's
suicidal.
We were talking about a German-led EU. Now we're talking about a French-led EU. And
Yes.
the nuclear reactors that Germany is closing down are nuclear reactors that the French are going to build.
Mm-hmm. Because the French have been pretty hot on their nuclear energy, haven't they? And they've done quite well with it, actually. They export it to Britain, in fact.
And I think it makes sense as a policy, nuclear energy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it doesn't take up too much land, really, relative to other things, certainly to
Hopefully a mistake
solar and
won't-
wind.
Hopefully a mistake won't take place.
Yeah, touch wood. But what is Germany doing about these problems? Well, the complete opposite of what they should be doing, in my opinion. What they're doing is they're targeting the right in very deliberate ways. And I think that the right are the people who are talking about these things, saying, hang on a minute, we shouldn't follow these suicidal EK policies. We shouldn't allow foreign people in our country because they don't contribute to the country. It's a net loss for Germany to let these people in. These are the people saying these things, right? It's not the left, obviously. And how are they received? Well, like this. Massive press crackdown in Germany. Government bans Compact magazine, an unprecedented move. Police search publisher's home in early morning raid. So I wasn't familiar with this magazine, but you could think of them as a sort of Lotus Eaters equivalent in Germany. You know, they've got a magazine, which we have now. They have a YouTube channel where I think they had 300,000 subscribers, which has been since shut down, by the way. And the German authorities raided both the office and home of the publisher, Jürgen Elasser, I think. And that was 200 police officers for this one raid on, one man's workplace and home. So it's a very serious thing. They're closing down the magazine and the YouTube channel. It's unnecessary censorship because if we look, things like this, Germany bans right-wing extremist Compact magazine. Well, let's actually have a look at the website because you can still access it in Britain, I think. And here it is. It doesn't seem particularly extreme. It's talking about Milei, Venezuela. Got some columnists there. It's general political commentary that you would expect, right, from any outlet that's right-wing in any European country or North America.
Also, I think I see Batya Angasargan, and I don't think she wouldn't qualify as an extremist. I don't know about other authors, but...
Well, there are some people here. Josh Hawley, who you might recognize the name of, obviously an American politician, conservative, pretty mainstream conservative, somewhat of a household name in America. Here he is writing, I think this, unless there's someone of the same name, writing for their magazine. So they've got senior politicians writing for them, and they're seen as this extremist thing. I don't think Josh Hawley is, a mid-century German enthusiast. I don't know. Maybe he's kept it very secret, but it seems to me that it's pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. And even, they're criticizing Joe Biden on the grounds of he's running a fascist economy. This is an article in their publication saying, hey, this is bad. So from a German perspective, even though National Socialism and fascism are technically different things and they get conflated, they're not fans of this thing. They're not really extremists in the sense that Germans would necessarily be concerned about.
Yeah, but that is a policy of the EU now. The EU is supposed to be a supranational organization, and although it could respect ethnic identity of the group of the member states, it has chosen to not respect it. So any person who would say remotely centrist or remotely right-wing things and values that 20 years ago people would say that, okay, yeah, we should guard borders, we should have a social cohesion structured around national identity, they immediately portray as an extremist.
So here's the woman responsible for it, and we can translate her post. She is the one that's responsible. Today, I banned the right-wing extremist Compact magazine. It agitates in an unspeakable way against Jews, against Muslims, and against our democracy. Our ban is a hard blow against right-wing extremists, the right-wing extremist scene. And I think that this is a very uncharitable characterization, and it's just providing a casus belli, a false one, to shut them down because they say stuff that is politically difficult for you. It is purely, they are my enemies, therefore I will destroy them using any means necessary.
Yes, and what is really interesting here is that they only talk about extremism in the right, allegedly existing. They never talk about any other form of extremism.
I know, yeah, because the extremism in the left is useful to them.
Yes.
Because they are of the left and it helps achieve their political goals.
And that's a problem with the term far right, the way that people are using it and the way they allow how they adopt the way the left uses it, because the left is bombarding the public discussion with a question of whether particular policies are far right or not, and no one is asking about the far left.
I also like the fact that they're talking about democracy and banning political, affiliated people.
Yeah.
Surely in a democracy, if it's truly a democracy, you would allow any opinions, wouldn't you? Because it's the people's voice, you should be allowing any party to run. Well, of course, the German constitution forbids that, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
You could make the argument that a parliamentary democracy has to draw some lines when it comes to anti-parliamentary forces. That's an argument that people make. But the issue is here that there are also anti-parliamentary forces on the left. No one is talking about it, because you could say that the whole Marxist agenda is anti-parliamentary.
Of course, yeah. Well, they're revolutionary by nature, aren't they? But I think that what they're doing here is just trying to use the wiggle room you've got against being against our democracy. How do you define that? That's so subjective. We see it in the United States as well. It's just a cudgel to beat your political enemies with, and it's not really applicable as far as I see it. And another case here is the AfD party, which is doing quite well in the polls. And
I wonder why.
Yeah, the Germany's far right, this is Politico's words, AfD is soaring. Can a ban stop it? And of course, this is talking about the fact that it's in consideration that they're going to ban the party.
Yeah, that's the answer to the argument that I was mentioning before, that sometimes banning has the exact opposite effects.
Yeah, and I think that actually...
It increases notoriety.
Yeah, and a party that is polling, they're the third in the polls? They're doing quite well, at least.
Yeah, but Politico, does it have any credibility left?
No, but this is just one outlet of many that are saying the same thing. And it's also being considered by politicians as well. I'm just using this as a sort of showcase. But, if you purport to be a democracy and the party that's doing very well in your democracy gets banned, can you still call yourself a democracy? And you're doing it in the name of democracy. I don't think that's actually true.
They're doing it in the name of our democracy, which raises the question, who is we?
Yes, exactly.
Who is them?
So it's to the point where this is sort of old news now. This happened last year, but there were areas in Germany that have classified branches of the AfD as extremist. Saxony has, and also Thuringia, Saxony-Anhalt. Sorry, I'm going to be butchering these. They've classified them as an extremist group. I'm not entirely sure of the implications of this, but it seems like it's just steps in a direction of cracking down on them. That much I think is clear, right? That's the only reason they would do that.
Say one thing to tie this with our conversation, what you said in the beginning. There was a politician from the AfD party, and she cited some statistics that the police circulated about Afghans being overrepresented in particular crime, especially gang rapes. And she was fined, and I think she was persecuted and fined.
Reading out statistical facts is a criminal offense in Germany.
Yes, and the question is, why are they circulating these facts? And my suspicion is that they want to drive the narrative towards a purely Marxist understanding of it, and saying crime is purely economic. The only way to address crime in crime-ridden communities is by economic means. So Germans, you need to be taxed more in order to fund these communities. And that's how we come in a situation like the one you mentioned in the beginning, where it says that 47.3% of benefit recipients are foreigners.
Yeah, if you're not allowed to look at the data and it's illegal to talk about it, funnily enough, nothing gets done about it. So this article I found interesting from a French publication. It says, the far-right party's strong results make it a danger to democracy, say its opponents, but banning the party would take several years. So that's probably why they haven't done it quite yet. And of course, that gives the AfD some time to cover themselves and fight it at least. But at the same time, it seems like people are pushing this in motion. And considering that the AfD and magazines like Compact Magazine are the ones that are pointing out lots of the problems ailing Germany and providing solutions that aren't just the default solutions that the left and, the regime are giving people, I don't see them having much of a chance of recovering. But I wanted to talk very briefly about how they can actually ban these sorts of things. So Article 21 in brackets 2 of the Basic Law, which is basically the German constitution. I don't know whether you can look in the notes, Stelios, and read the German word for me, because your German is much better than mine.
The Grundgesetz.
There we go.
Basic Law. Apologies if I'm butchering the language.
It's better than I can do.
Yeah.
It states explicitly that parties which seek to undermine or abolish the democratic order and endanger the existence of the Federal Republic of Germany are unconstitutional. So this is the sort of constitutional justification for cracking down on things like this. And then a federal court has to determine whether the party should be banned. This has happened in the past with the Socialist Reich Party in 1952 and the Communist Party of Germany in 1956. I don't see Communist parties being banned in this day and age, though. And also there is another act as well, the Political Parties Act, which also sets rules for formation and, the activities and the financing of political parties. And they must adhere to a sort of democratic framework as determined by basically the political elites. And if, you're against those political elites, then it's going to be rigged against you, which I think is happening here.
We also need to add that laws don't apply themselves. There are people who interpret them.
Absolutely.
And the important thing here to remember is that the people who interpret this Article 21, Clause 2, the Basic Law, they seem to be pretty fine with people who do undermine the existence of the German Federal Republic from the left.
No, absolutely. So I wanted to have a quick look at the AfD's manifesto. So one thing that's worth mentioning, I have a VPN, so I can set it to Germany and I can read the manifesto in English, and it's quite interesting. However, if you're outside of Germany, you can't read it. So that is a bit of a problem. But I have taken a screenshot of their views on democracy. And it's very interesting because as they are portrayed in the media, it's very different to what they actually want to do. They want a Swiss model of referenda. So that means they want more direct democracy, more people just voting on what they want. And, the Swiss model, when polled around the world, tends to be quite popular because they have, they had a referendum on, do you want to ban the burqa and things like that, where you can just vote directly on the issues rather than have representatives decide for you, which, if you care about democracy, is a pretty strong form of democracy, if you ask me. And then
direct one.
Yes. They talk about making the government lean, reducing the size of the government. Not very, fascistic of them, is it? Guaranteed separation of powers. They want to realign party funding and constitutional law, limit the influence and power of political parties. They want free election of candidates. They want to reduce career politicians by limiting the tenure of office, curtail lobbyism, punish wastages of tax revenues. There are lots of things here that are very different to how they're portrayed in the media. And this is their own party's manifesto, right? This is the thing in which they're sort of organizing around. This seems quite liberal to me.
Yes, and the separation of power is something that that leftists hate.
Mm-hmm.
Because they want absolute power for themselves.
I think we can see relatively clearly if, we can take the manifesto at its word and it's not all lies and they've just made it all up as a smokescreen, which I don't think is the case. This is obviously a misrepresentation with political motivations, and Germany will suffer for it.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you think we're doing a good job and you'd like to support us, you can go over to lotuseast.com and for £5 a month, help us keep the lights on because, of course, we are demonetized on YouTube. And while you're there, come and hang out with us at Lads Hour. The only way I can really describe this is like The View for Men, where the lads sit around and discuss a particularly interesting topic of the day. This particular one was on whether we should or should not cancel the left, and I won't spoil the conclusion that we came to. And go and follow us over on Twitter/X at lotuseaters_com.